A couple of days ago, there was a little bit of a press conference where I was lucky enough to be invited and to be present when they told us about this beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful video game that you are seeing on screen. And they told us quite a bit of information about it, and there's quite a lot to be excited about. Alzara Radiant Echoes. First and foremost, what is this thing? Well, we were able to sit down with the heavy presentation with developers. They told us about the team, they told us about the gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. This is just a JRPG that is not so much of a JRPG, because it's being developed by a French-based indie studio, which it has amazing, it has lovely, it has very, very good credentials. So, what is this game? Well, this is a vibrant, turn-based JRPG based on a Mediterranean region. The enemies, the monsters, the mythical creatures that you're going to be seeing in this game are also based on Mediterranean legends. It is going to go live on Kickstarter right now. As you're seeing this video, you can find a link to head over there and support them. And it aims for a release on 2026. Yeah, it's actually quite a lot, but hey, such is life. It's aimed to release in 2026 on consoles and PC. So what is the world, the setting, the story of this place? There's a whole bunch of interesting stuff and mechanics and story to talk about this game. So the story is set in the world where magic is lost. There's just one nation that is invading our protagonist's land, and that is how the adventure begins, because they are going to be the tip of the spear of the resistance against this invasion. And this is where the inspiration comes into play, because a lot of what you're seeing right here and a lot of what we're going to be discussing about the story and the overall setting, it's of course going to be based on the overall inspiration of the game. The graphical quality, the graphical art style on itself, they said that they focused themselves on being something like Golden Sun, and I can completely see that as like that kind of vibrant thing. And the overall inspiration on the overall everything comes from Final Fantasy. They did say that they inspired their game in Final Fantasy on itself, but most importantly, this is what really catches my interest, that they basically inspire themselves more than in any other Final Fantasy on Final Fantasy X, which is a very, very interesting choice, because Final Fantasy X is to some people where the golden age of Final Fantasy to some extent ended, although that's a little bit of a open for discussion. And yeah, it's whole based on tastes and what have you. Now there's also inspiration in Avatar, and this is one of the biggest ones. Not only, yes, the anime, but not only on like it's a huge thing. It's basically more than anything on the four elements. It's focused on the four elements. The heroes use the four elements. There's also a whole bunch of things that you're going to be able to do in the world with the elements. But before though, let's talk about the developers. Let's talk about the pedigree and what is it that they have worked on. Right now, as of now, they are a very, very small studio. However, they have worked on several huge big companies, like on Ubisoft, where they have worked in Ghost Recon Wildlands, Dead Cells. They have also developers that worked on Divinity Original Sin, and you cannot ask for better talent than people that has worked on one of the most important RPGs of our modern times, because Divinity Original Sin was actually the tip of the spear that brought us at the end of the day Baldur's Gate 3, which is, it's crazy, it's huge. So yeah, Divinity, to some extent you could say that it laid down the foundations for what Baldur's Gate 3 is so amazing. Now the character designer is Yoshino Ambe, which you would know for working in games like Trials of Mana, Genshin Impact and Fire Emblem, and you can certainly do see like the inspiration or like the spirit of them embedded into what you're seeing on screen right now. But when they immediately sold me when we were listening to that press presentation, I was immediately sold when they told me that Motoi Sakuraba was composing the soundtrack. And if you're not aware, he's the composer of the also beloved Plim Plim Plum, or Gwyn's theme, or he's the composer for the Dark Souls soundtrack, the entire trilogy, alongside with many other amazing games. He's basically more than anything working with Bandai Namco. But yeah, I mean, if you love the soundtrack from Dark Souls, this is the mastermind behind that. And yeah, he's composing the music on this beautiful game that you're seeing right here. So let's talk about the gameplay elements and a little bit more about the games. We talk about the inspiration, we talk about the credentials, and overall what you're seeing on the screen right now on a endless loop. Sorry, we don't have that much material to work on this game that much. But that being said, the magic disappeared 3 generations ago. There's an invasion going on right here. This invasion seems to be resembling as well a little bit of the narrative from Avatar as well. And yeah, you're going to be leading the resistance. Now, when it comes to the overworlds, there's going to be the Mediterranean overworld that you are going to be able to explore as you do on regular RPGs, but there's also 10 explorable areas. At least that's what they're aiming to do. In these explorable areas, you also include dungeons, and this is where it gets interesting. Because remember what I told you about the 4 elements? The 4 elements are also going to have an impact on how you explore the world, because there's puzzle solving. They did mention that it's nothing too heavy, that it keeps you like there for hours and hours, something a little bit more familiar, more friendly, that it's just a nice thing to have right there. But now, the juicy thing, the combat. The combat is also going to be based on, you have the 4 protagonists right here. They are going to have access to spells from the 4 different elements. And they also mentioned something that I forgot to mention, is that one of the inspirations is Lost Odyssey. Now, Lost Odyssey, it's a very underrated and cult classic game from the Xbox 360 era. And yeah, not too many games draw inspiration from that game that much, at least to my knowledge. It's a breath of fresh air that they are using this thing right here. Now, the combat it's based on rows. Like you have, for example, your frontliners, and then you will see throughout the rendition of the trailer that you see right there in the background, that there's also the protagonists that are on the backside. This is going to impact how your elements are going to dictate the gameplay and the overall flow of combat. So your elements are going to be determined for your, depending you're in the front side of the fights, your elements are going to be leaning a little bit more into DPS. If you're on the back side, you're going to be able to use your elements towards a little bit more of a support or defense kind of thing. Now, there's also the titans or icons, or whatever you would like to call them, from Final Fantasy. They are in here as well. There's 10 of them, and they are called legends, the summons of those big huge titans that you're going to be able to use in combat. There's 1 legend for each and one of the elements. Now, I did say that there's 4 elements, then why do we have 10 titans or 10 legends? Well, basically, you can mix, you see our protagonist right there using a lightning kind of strike. That is because if you combine the elements on gameplay, you are going to be able to change those elements and to bind them together into something different. Either whether if it's going to be more powerful or more like a support kind of thing, that will remain to be seen, but it is going to be different. So all of those combinations will sum up all to 10 elements. Those 10 elements are going to be able to summon 10 legends as well. And they did answer some of the questions that we were doing right there at the press conference. And one of them, which is interesting, at first I wasn't quite clear, because this is kind of a controversial decision. When it comes to the enemies on the field, it's going to be based on random encounters, which is something that it's not that much beloved for many gamers. We don't really like that much random encounters, and yes, it is a thing. They are going to be based on random encounters, the combat, but they did say that the combat, they want for it to be dynamic. They do not want for fights to last longer than 1 minute. And they also mentioned they didn't quite expand on this. We did ask, and they didn't actually give us that much information. It's just that they told us that they were going to be able to give the player a tool to manage the frequency and the amount of experience that you get from encounters. So that is to alleviate the random kind of encounter thing. If you ask me, I mean, this is always controversial. This is always based on opinion. There's people that likes it's a minority, the people that like the random encounters. But I'm guessing that it's also a design choice for maybe it's easier for developers to have it like this. Remember that they are a small team. It's just that do have in mind that the combats are going to be random, and that it alleviates the thing when you have like less encounters but gain more experience from them. How much they balance the character progression in this regard. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything that we know for the game. And I'm just happy to present it to you guys. Let me know what you think about this game in the comment section down below. Have a lovely day and goodbye. Subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.